We at IGN recently reviewed Star Trek Online, and I think it's fair to say that we had a few criticisms about it. We think that, despite the game's flaws, it still has potential. So we've come up with a list of 4 things that Cryptic Studios can do to make Star Trek Online a better game. As it is, ground combat is Star Trek Online's single biggest issue. It's clumsy and makes you feel completely disconnected from the action. Improving officer AI would be a big step towards making ground missions more fun. Going a step further and allowing players to control how and when their officers use their special abilities would make the battles more tactical and involving. On top of this, lowering enemy numbers but increasing their difficulty will make each ground fight feel more significant. Currently, I can wander into a group of equal level enemies, do nothing, and still win handsomely. Space was one of the better portions of Star Trek Online, but it got stale long before it should have. Cryptic introduced environmental damage at the start of the game, but then missed some huge opportunities to use it. Given the fact that these battles are, in space, players should be able to contend with and have the option to blow up stray asteroids, do battle around volatile stars, encounter gravitational forces, and all sorts of sci-fi awesomeness. There are stages when the environment does affect how battles play out, but they only result in slowing down the action to a crawl instead of making it wild and more exciting. Right now, flying into debris does nothing, and flying into the surface of a planet gives you a nifty blur effect and nothing else. Making better use of the environmental effects would open up more tactical options and make for a much more involved and fun game. Most of the game takes place in very small instances, with population limits below 10. Not exactly massive when we're talking about a massively multiplayer game. Cryptic would do well to introduce some planets that are actually as large as they look when you're on them. Have a bunch of things to do on there, and let at least a few dozen people be on there concurrently before you start splitting it up into instances. Letting players have the option to work with and against each other in a large setting with several different tasks and goals will make it feel much more like you're part of a larger universe. And on a related note, populate these planets with some wildlife. Where are all the crazy alien creatures at? Itemization in Star Trek Online is some of the strangest we've ever seen. Equipment for your spacecraft is relatively straightforward, though the arbitrary numbers and fractions of numbers mean nothing to the player without knowing what number they're starting on. Plus 7.5 to disruptor weapons? Excellent! What were my disruptor weapons at originally? You can't tell me? Well, balls. What good is that then? Itemization for your personal gear is simply baffling. Kits are too complicated for something with a cooldown that long, and weapons have far more extra abilities than is necessary in a 3-button combat system. If the effects were split up and assigned to separate attacks, it would make for a more interesting combat system and would make selecting weapons more intuitive. Most MMOs have room for extra content, and Star Trek Online is no exception. That isn't what this game desperately needs right now though. What Star Trek Online needs are tweaks across the board to make the game more involved and the universe feel more alive. It is unlikely that we'll see any sweeping changes anytime soon. But a man can dream. A man can dream.